Picture this: a quiet suburban street on a crisp autumn evening. The sun's setting, casting long shadows across pristine lawns and well-maintained homes. A black Mercedes pulls up to a stop sign. Its driver, a distinguished figure in a tailored suit, carefully checking both directions before proceeding. Suddenly, red and blue lights flash in the rearview mirror. For most people, a routine traffic stop is nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But in America, these encounters can reveal deeply rooted assumptions and biases that continue to plague our society. What happened next would not only challenge these prejudices, but also spark a conversation about power, respect, and the complex dynamics between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Our story centers on a respected circuit court judge with over 2 decades of experience on the bench. Having just left a late session at the courthouse, he was heading home to his family, his mind still processing the day's cases. The approaching police officer, fresh to the force with barely 2 years of experience, had no idea who he'd just pulled over. The dash cam footage tells a tale that would soon capture national attention. As the officer approaches the vehicle, his hand instinctively resting on his holster, the interaction begins like countless others across America. But what unfolds in the next few minutes will leave both men forever changed, challenging their perspectives and forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about society's preconceptions. License and registration, the officer demands, his flashlight beam scanning the car's interior. The judge's response: well, that's where this story takes an unexpected turn. His words, measured and precise, would transform this routine traffic stop into a powerful lesson about dignity, respect, and the importance of looking beyond surface judgments. Through this encounter, we witness a raw and honest exploration of racial profiling, privilege, and the delicate balance between law enforcement and civil rights. But this isn't just another viral video or social media sensation. This is a real story about real people, each bringing their own experiences, fears, and hopes to a situation that could have gone very differently. What makes this story truly remarkable isn't just what happened during those tense moments by the roadside. It's the ripple effect that followed, touching lives far beyond the 2 men involved. Their encounter would spark discussions in police departments, courtrooms, and communities across the country, challenging us all to examine our own biases and assumptions. As we dive deeper into this extraordinary tale, you'll witness how a simple traffic stop transformed into a watershed moment for both men involved. But before we reveal what happened next, ask yourself, what would you have done in either man's shoes? How would you have handled a situation where assumptions and reality collided so dramatically? Stay tuned as we uncover the full story of this remarkable encounter. A story that proves truth can indeed be more compelling than fiction, and that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected moments. What happened next would not only change both men's perspectives forever, but would also become a teachable moment for an entire nation grappling with issues of race, authority, and justice. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his wallet, not from fear, but from a deep, simmering frustration he carried for decades. Even in his tailored suit, even with his law degree and position on the bench, he was still just another profile to some. The streetlights cast harsh shadows across his dashboard as he retrieved his license, each movement deliberate and calm, despite the storm brewing inside. The young officer stood at the window, scrutinizing the license with his flashlight. His expression shifted subtly as he read the credentials. Something wasn't adding up in his mind. Here was a man whose signature appeared on countless court documents, whose decisions shaped the very laws he enforced, being pulled over for what the officer claimed was a routine traffic stop. But there had been no traffic violation. The judge knew it, and deep down, the officer knew it too. The dash cam footage would later reveal the Mercedes had come to a complete stop, used proper signals, and followed every traffic rule to the letter. This wasn't about broken taillights or rolling stops. It was about something far more deeply rooted in American society. The tension grew thicker as the officer radioed in the license information. His voice carried a hint of uncertainty now, a crack in the authoritative facade he'd initially presented. The response from dispatch would confirm what he was already beginning to realize. He'd just pulled over one of the most respected judicial figures in the state. Meanwhile, other patrol cars began arriving at the scene, their lights painting the quiet neighborhood in alternating red and blue. It was standard procedure for backup to arrive during traffic stops, but something about this situation felt different. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, cell phones recording the scene unfolding before them. The judge remained seated, hands visible on the steering wheel, just as he taught his own son to do during traffic stops. Years of experience on both sides of the law had taught him the importance of these moments. Every word, every gesture could either escalate or diffuse a situation that was balanced on a knife's edge. But this judge wasn't just thinking about his own safety anymore. He was thinking about every other black professional who'd been profiled, every parent who'd had the talk with their children about police interactions, every person who'd ever felt the sting of presumed guilt based on nothing but appearance. As more officers gathered around the vehicle, the original officer's demeanor began to shift. The realization of who he'd pulled over was starting to sink in, but instead of immediately backing down, something unexpected happened. The next few words exchanged between these two men would set in motion a chain of events that would resonate far beyond this single traffic stop. The dash cam kept rolling, capturing every word, every subtle change in tone, every loaded pause in what was about to become a powerful testimony to both the challenges and possibilities for change in American law enforcement. What happened next would challenge not just these two men, but an entire system's assumptions about authority, respect, and justice. The judge's voice cut through the tension with a calm authority that made everyone pause. "Officer, I'd like you to articulate, for the record, your probable cause for initiating this stop." His words weren't confrontational, but they carried the weight of decades of legal experience. The young officer shifted his weight, the beam of his flashlight wavering slightly. "Sir, I observed." He started, then hesitated. The dash cam continued recording as the silence stretched, heavy with unspoken implications. Other officers exchanged glances, their body language betraying growing discomfort. "I'm going to share something with you," the judge continued, his tone measured but firm. He reached slowly for his briefcase in the passenger seat, causing several officers to tense visibly. Inside was a stack of court documents, cases he presided over that very day, including several police testimonies. The lead officer's radio crackled to life. Dispatch was confirming the judge's identity, listing his credentials, his years on the bench, his reputation in the legal community. With each detail, the dynamics of the situation shifted palpably. The other officers began stepping back, their earlier show of force now seeming increasingly out of place. But the judge wasn't done. He began recounting specific cases, dates, and incidents, all from memory, of similar stops that had crossed his bench. His words painted a vivid picture of systemic issues that couldn't be ignored. The young officer's face changed as realization dawned. He wasn't just facing a traffic stop gone wrong. He was facing a moment of truth that would define his career. Neighbors had gathered on their porches now, phones recording everything. The judge's Mercedes, the cluster of patrol cars, the officers' uncertain postures. All of it was being documented. Social media was already lighting up as residents shared clips of the unfolding scene. Then came the moment that would later be replayed thousands of times across news channels and social media. The judge reached for something else in his car, moving with deliberate slowness. The officers tensed again, but what he pulled out would change everything about this encounter. As he held it up in the beam of the flashlight, the young officer's expression transformed completely. The dash cam kept rolling, capturing a scene that would soon become a powerful symbol in the ongoing national conversation about law enforcement and racial profiling. What happened next would not only reshape both men's perspectives, but would also spark a movement for change in police departments across the country. In a stunning turn of events, what the judge held up was a commendation letter, one he'd written himself just months ago, praising this very same officer for his outstanding community service work. The young officer's face drained of color as recognition set in. He'd been the responding officer during a domestic violence case, showing exceptional compassion and professionalism that had caught the judge's attention. But before either man could process this twist of fate, another patrol car pulled up. Out stepped the police chief, who'd been monitoring the situation through radio chatter. The atmosphere shifted again as he approached, his presence adding another layer of complexity to an already charged situation. The dash cam captured the chief's expression as he glanced between his young officer and the judge, two men whose paths had crossed before under very different circumstances. Unknown to everyone present, the chief had his own history with racial profiling cases, including a recent department-wide investigation that hadn't yet made headlines. The judge maintained his composed demeanor, but his grip on the commendation letter tightened slightly. He'd been planning to present it at next week's city council meeting, where coincidentally, police reform was on the agenda. Now, fate had orchestrated a much different presentation. The young officer stood frozen, caught between his training, his past good deed, and the reality of what he'd just done. The chief's arrival meant this incident would no longer stay contained. It would ripple through the department, forcing conversations many had been avoiding. As neighborhood onlookers continued recording, a local news van pulled up quietly at the end of the street. The simple traffic stop had evolved into something far more significant, a moment that would test everyone's commitment to justice, reform, and honest dialogue about law enforcement practices. The next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of this encounter, but potentially the future of police-community relations in their city. The judge looked at the letter in his hand, then at the assembled officers, knowing his next words would either bridge a divide or deepen it irrevocably. The judge held up the commendation letter and addressed everyone present. This letter recognizes Officer Thompson's exceptional service to our community. 3 months ago, he showed remarkable judgment that saved a life. Tonight, he made a different kind of judgment, one we need to address openly and honestly. The chief stepped forward, but the judge raised his hand. Before you speak, I want to share that tomorrow morning, I'm launching a pioneering program pairing officers with judges for ride-alongs. Officer Thompson, you're now officially my first participant. The young officer's eyes widened as murmurs spread through the growing crowd. The judge continued, his voice carrying across the now silent street. We can handle this one of two ways, through conflict and denial, or through understanding and growth. I'm choosing the latter. He turned to the chief. Your officer's previous actions showed his potential. Tonight's actions show how much work we still have to do. Then came the twist no one expected. The judge pulled out another document, a draft of the police reform bill he'd been quietly developing with community leaders. Officer Thompson, your actions tonight just changed this document significantly, because now I understand we don't just need policy changes. We need to bridge the gap between those who make the laws and those who enforce them. The dash cam footage captured the powerful moment when the young officer, his voice shaking slightly, responded, Your Honor, I accept the ride-along assignment, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging my mistake tonight. As news cameras rolled and phones recorded, what started as a routine traffic stop transformed into a watershed moment for police reform. The judge's innovative program would soon become a model for departments nationwide, with Officer Thompson's story serving as its compelling foundation. In the weeks that followed, that quiet suburban street became a symbol of possibility. The judge's ride-along program transformed police training across the city. Officer Thompson didn't just participate, he became its strongest advocate, sharing his story at police academies and community forums. The dash cam footage, which went viral, showed something rare. Two men choosing growth over conflict, understanding over assumption. But the real change happened in the daily interactions that followed. Officers began attending court sessions to understand the legal implications of their work. Judges spent time in patrol cars, experiencing firsthand the split-second decisions officers face. 6 months later, at a national law enforcement conference, the judge and Officer Thompson shared the stage. Their story had inspired similar programs in 12 other cities. The young officer, now promoted to community relations sergeant, spoke about how one traffic stop changed his entire approach to policing. The police reform bill, shaped by their experience, passed with unprecedented support. It included mandatory bias training, but with a twist. The training was led by pairs of officers and judges who had completed the ride-along program. Their real-world experiences proved more powerful than any textbook scenario. The chief, initially skeptical, became one of the program's strongest supporters after seeing dramatic improvements in community relations and officer performance. The original commendation letter now hangs framed in the police academy, alongside a photo of the judge and Officer Thompson from that pivotal night. But perhaps the most meaningful change happened in the everyday encounters between police and citizens. Traffic stops in their city became opportunities for respect and understanding rather than moments of tension and fear. The neighborhood where it all began saw a significant increase in community policing initiatives and a decrease in profiling complaints. As our story ends, it's worth noting that real change often starts with one moment, one choice, one opportunity to see beyond our assumptions. The judge and Officer Thompson didn't just create a program. They created a template for turning confrontation into conversation, prejudice into progress. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful changes come not from grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but from two people willing to look past their differences and see each other's humanity. In the end, what could have been another tragic headline became a beacon of hope, proving that even in our most challenging moments, we have the power to choose understanding over division, growth over conflict, and progress over prejudice.